they're doing their job, but we don't know what's inside. They're probably happy we're doing this.
Yeah. It's so true. It's in our heart, man. It's in our heart.
Of course, man.
Yo, thanks,
And
Greg.
I met Greg.
Yeah, I met Greg. Yo, let's go. It's in our heart. Let's go,
Much
man.
love. Stay focused.
Thanks. Cheers. Liberté, 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 liberté. Ooh, it's warm over here. It's warm on top of this. We found an air vent, guys. We found an air vent. It's kind of warm on top of this. Woo. Hey,
Let's plug the phone in.
yeah, let's plug the phone in. I'll hold this for you.
We're breathing on the
phone to keep it warm, guys, because if it gets too cold, then the phone just dies, and we don't want the stream to die, okay? Because we love you, we love chat. For the trolls who are in chat, we love you too. So thank you for trolling this chat. Thank you for trolling my live stream. I really appreciate it. You have no life, but I really... Let's give an L in chat for love, for loving the trolls. Put a big L in chat for the love for the trolls, and also because they're losers. So, love you. Hey, the big truck's moving.
Yeah, I'm getting this.
Yeah, the big truck.
Hey everybody, we're live now. Just a chill Sunday stream. Hanging out. Keeping it casual. I guess I haven't given any notice, so people will start filing in as they come. Oh, it looks like we got some people in the chat already. We got JB, OGT, FNO. What's up, guys? Glad to see you. You're here nice and early. Cheers. Tell me why. Good to see you. I think I'm going to start up Entropy, too. But yeah, just going to hang out, talk to the chat. I got a bunch of stuff I can cover. Like, I know I usually stream on Tuesday nights, but I always have a surplus of content that I never get to, so I might as well cover some of that today. And yeah, we'll just chill, hang out. My drink of choice today is bubbly. I love slamming these things down. And yeah. I'm also thinking I might open it up to anybody who wants to come on the stream on Zoom. I don't know how good of an idea that is, but yeah, I'll leave that open to people. Maybe I'll drop a Zoom link in the chat, and if anyone wants to join that, they can. So yeah, you could come on video or on audio, and yeah, you can come hang out. But anyways, just to start off, I'm watching Greg's throwback stream from this day, February 19th of 2022. And I'm just kind of reminiscing because I think a lot of us here know where we were on this day last year. Like, it's ingrained in our memories, for better or for worse, really. And I remember me personally, on February 18th, that was, I believe, the Friday, and that's when all the beatdowns really started, all the pepper spraying, like all the crazy police violence, the trampling with the horse. And I remember on that day, I was just scouring all the footage, looking for footage so I could make some of my own videos, specifically a montage of everybody getting beat by the police and all the police brutality. And I threw something together that day, but I knew I wanted to be down there. I couldn't make it down that day. So I think I stayed up all night, and then at 4 in the morning, I started driving down from London, Ontario, all the way to Ottawa. And I made it pretty late, so I actually missed out on all of this. And I see, like, this was the Saturday, so there was still a lot of police beatings and pepper spraying that was going on. And I missed all of that because I was just in the car driving through shitty-ass weather, going up roads, like getting stuck with cars while we're trying to make it up these snowy roads and just trying to make it to Ottawa. And I think I made it there by like 4 or 5 p.m. Oh, sweet. We got some more people in the chat. We got Ferryman. He's saying that he was just about to go live, but this is better. Yeah, man. If you want to go live, if you want to come on with me, feel free. I dropped the Zoom link in the chat there, and I have my Zoom open, so I'm gonna see you coming in if that's what you'd like to do. I have a bunch of content prepared, but I'm like open to do whatever, talk about whatever. Right now, I'm just reminiscing about this crazy weekend last year. And anyways, I made it on the Saturday about 4 or 5 p.m. And I met up with my buddy there. We went down with 2 huge cameras to go film everything. But we got there around like 5 or 6 p.m. when it started to get dark. And I'm kind of piecing it all together now. The cops, they boxed everybody into this area, into this 1 square block. Because when we got there, there was no action, there was no violence. It was all just like a crazy, fun street party. Like, there wasn't even really any tension. I think everybody got it out of their system. And yeah, those police were lined all up there, and they were just holding it down. And from what I understood is that we were all allowed to be there. We just walked in. There was no one blocking us from getting in or anything. And it was just like an epic street party. But yeah, see some more people in the chat. We have Steve LTT saying, Friday was fun. The pepper spray was weak. Yeah, I was just watching, good to see you, Steve. I was just watching you in this video earlier with Greg. I got to see earlier today a bunch of footage that I never saw because I was in the car all of that day. And yeah, you made it down that Thursday or Friday, and you were having a good interview with Greg. Yeah, it was pretty cool. You took one for the team there. You know, it seems like a rite of passage for every political dissident. You have to get pepper sprayed. Oh, sweet. We got Ferryman joining. Who else is here? LaGrosse Patat, good to see you, buddy. Pitter Patter, let's get at her. Becky, good to see you. B. Hiling, let's convoy on horses duel at dawn. Canada Day? Okay. And Entropy is working too. I think Ferryman's just connecting right now. Hello?
Yo, what's up, dude?
Nothing much, man. Just chilling. Was bored today. Figured might as well fire up a stream. No one else was streaming, and yeah, I have a surplus of content that I could cover. But yeah, I'm just reminiscing right now about last year. Now, is this the day that you got arrested, or that was the day before, right? The Friday?
No, it was today. It was the Saturday, so it's been a year. Yeah.
Okay. Here, I'm just gonna pull you up on Zoom here, on the video. There we go. Now we're both in here. Sweet,
yeah,
man.
I was one of the lucky. I didn't have my knees shoved into my head and butt stroked by a gun or kicked while I was on the ground or anything like that. It still sucked, but yeah, it wasn't as bad as a lot of people got. And I was lucky enough that they just, drove me out to basically South Gloucester, which is like a suburb of the city, and just kind of let me out. But a lot of people weren't that lucky, and it
right.
sucked.
Well, you got kind of like a really Chad walkout. Like, for one, you were like mogging all the cops that were around you, just like towering above them, and you're like, I don't know, it looked really good. I feel like it didn't get enough rounds. Like, for example, Shane got the walkout, and Jordan Peterson was like retweeting it, saying like, Canada has fallen. But,
yeah, that was a really good video though that somebody had taken, right? Like it was right on Shane's face, and he's surrounded. How many cops are surrounding him? Like 20?
I don't know. Yeah, it looked like that. At least like 5 or 6, and then there's probably like others securing the perimeter around that. Yeah.
It was. I remember though, as I walked out, like thinking in that moment, I was like, "Yeah, Canada's dead." Like it's weird. Like it was a. I don't want to be fucking cringe and gay, but like as I was like, because I was being walked out. I forget what street it's on, but it's west of Parliament. But like as you come like up the street towards Wellington, you can literally see Parliament like in the Peace Tower in the background, and I'm like being walked towards it. I'm just like, this country's fucking dead.
Right.
Like that was the moment for me that I became like entirely black-pilled.
It's bittersweet because, you know, you see all the intentions of people there, and they're so sweet. They're so like good-hearted. But, you know, is that really enough to hold down a country from what we're up against here?
Well, I don't know. I'm gonna get fed posty if I talk about this, but
Hey, you're allowed to say whatever you want on the Edge stream, but if the law comes after you, I can't do
well,
nothing
no,
about that.
the truth is that I watched protesters get beaten and tear gassed while they chanted "We love you" at the police.
Right.
And then I saw the media and the government treat them like they were violent terrorists, right? In the media. They address them like how come there was no video of CBC showing that, of protesters getting tear gassed and beaten while they chanted "We love you"? So like it comes to the point where it's like, yeah, I'm glad that everybody was peaceful, but what does it matter whenever all of your opponents, the government and the media, are all saying you're violent anyways? Well, maybe they should have been violent, because the reality is if the people had been violent and actually resisted, and there was more of them too, if they had pushed back against the police, right? This is one thing that gets lost. Nobody pushed back. All they did was stand their ground. If they had pushed back and forced them out and not just taken it, if they had actually resisted, then the police probably wouldn't have been able to do what they did. Or it would have gotten so egregious to the point where the police would have looked absurd. It was bad enough, but it would have gotten really bad if people had resisted at all, and they didn't. So if the government's going to label you violent extremist, I was saying this back in November of 2021 or December of 2022. They're going to force you to become the extremist that they say that you are eventually. That's the goal. The goal is to eventually drive you to the point where you are forced to use the types of resistance that they can actually label you as a violent extremist for. That's their goal. They want you to do that. And people will say, well, then don't do that. Well, that's easy to say until they start pushing you to the point where you have no other option, right? Totalitarian governments have done this all of history. They push you and push you and push you, and they call you all of these things, and it's gaslighting. They're preparing, the neutral people to look at this situation a certain way. So the reason they call the convoy and the freedom fighters violent, insurrectionist, extremist, acceleration, all of these words, is because that's what they're trying to push you to become. And they want that pre-programmed in people's brains, so that whenever you do become that thing, because you've been driven to it, all of a sudden everything they've done and said about you is justified. That's how this works. So they're going to push you at some point, become the extremist that they say that you are, even though you're not.
Well, yeah, it's nothing new under the sun. It's just a different flavor. And it's up to people like us to show them how they're doing it, and it's just a little bit different this time. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Like, people are just getting their ass beat. Like, what do you have to lose if you at least, like, push back a little? Like, there is the propaganda, like, atrocity propaganda that's happening to you that, could help. But still, that's going to be negligible because the coverage for the normies is still going to be, like you said, it's going to be like we were the violent ones this whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they didn't show, did any of these police beatings get shown on national television? No. Why? Because that's not very conducive to their narrative, is it? That we were the violent insurrectionists trying to overthrow the government, illegitimately. So they can't show those things, right? So they'll show, what did they show? They showed Evan Solomon getting a beer can thrown at his head, and I'm fucking glad somebody did that. Especially after the way he treated the convoy after. I'm glad somebody chucked the fucking beer can at his head.
That was like the peak of the violence that they went on and on about. Man, they couldn't muster up fuck all. Like the beer can, literally.
And the hoaxes too, right? Like,
oh yeah, the arson.
All of the lies that they said. They said, you just said one. The arson, the anti-Semitic flyer, the truckers have guns. They're stealing food from the homeless. They're harassing businesses. They're threatening to rape women. All of these things were lies. None of these claims were substantiated, and yet they said them, and they never retracted them. Now, Justice Rouleau, in his ruling, in his fucking, 9,000-page volume of basically.
Is that seriously how long it was? I didn't even
it's like 3,000 pages or something. It's fucking ridiculous.
Oh my god!
But he did admit that there was misinformation associated with the convoy, and he did specifically mention that example of the arson.
Right,
but
right.
It doesn't matter.
So at the end of the day, didn't they say that it was justified literally because the thing that happened in Coots, and since there was that patch, then that equals Diagolon, and there may or may not have been people who were at the protest before who watched the show or something? That's what it seemed like when I was reading like the results.
Yeah, so there's like a CBC article that came out yesterday, and they talked about this. That wasn't specifically related to his ruling. That was related to, so basically Jeremy's testimony is brought up in the ruling. I think all the testimony is, but whenever Justice Rouleau is discussing Jeremy's evidence, he says that Jeremy downplayed the true nature of Diagolon, and that he agrees with the RCMP's assessment that it is a militia-like organization.
Oh my God.
With extremist beliefs and blah, 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 right? So that wasn't necessarily part of the ruling. The justification, Clyde Do Something actually nailed this. He's the one who basically filtered through the bullshit and then assessed it perfectly. Because the justification given by Justice Rouleau for the invoking of the Emergency Measures Act was that it was justified because the government failed, right, at every level of government to manage this situation, as did policing. All levels of policing failed. This was a tweet that
it was a tweet? Okay.
Yeah. I have it on my Telegram if you want to bring it up. And so, but if you read through that and you just kind of read between the lines there, what Rouleau is saying is that government incompetence and policing incompetence are now the justification that the government needs to invoke a state of emergency in this country. In government incompetence is what justifies the government invoking the Emergency Measures Act. If that's the case, we're fucked. Because the government is incompetent all the time.
So is that implying that just the every level of police, like the Ottawa police and then the RCMP, they all fumbled it? Like they all were incompetent and fumbled their responsibility? Or is that implying something greater? Like obviously it is, but
this is actually a very, I think Jeremy talked about this on Friday. I love that he threw the police under the bus, because there you go, dick fucks. You were pathetic, coward, dog, bootlicking piece of shit. You did exactly what the government told you, and then the government threw you under the bus and said it was your fault that this happened. There you go. That's your reward, you fucking faggots. You're the ones to blame for what happened. It was your failure. And again, this is part of Justice Rouleau's ruling, right? Is there was a failure of policing. What do you mean there was a failure of policing? That the police failed to enforce laws that weren't being broken?
Tyler? It's so funny seeing all the friendly and familiar faces popping up. Hey, it's John. John with the sign, who always just stoically stands in the back.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So this is the Saturday.
Yeah, so I'm confused. This is there was 2 main days where there was beatings, right?
Yeah, the first was on the Friday.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to go back, what happened was on the Thursday night, they basically locked it. Do you remember the red zone thing that they've made? It was basically from the 417 to Wellington, and from I think Kent to what is that road? From Kent to Sussex / the Rideau Parkway or Queen Elizabeth Parkway was all, nobody could go in, nobody could go out, right? And
Yeah.
so the Thursday night I went down, and it was literally every single road that went in or out of that area had police blocking it. Now they couldn't actually restrict you from entering the area if you had reason. So I was able to get in by vehicle just by saying like, well, my hotel is in this, area. What do you want me to do?
Did they ask for any like confirmation or
No, because they are not allowed
papers,
to do
please?
that. They're
Okay,
not allowed
sweet.
to do that.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I remember that kind of setup. I remember on the Saturday around 4 or 5 p.m., me and my friend were going in with cameras, and we saw the outline, and we were trying to figure out a way that we could get in. But by that time, it had been all contained in that square block there, and it was just a party, and we just walked right in. No one stopped us.
Yeah. So what happened was I found this interesting because, like I said, I went in on the Thursday night and it was like that. It was blocked everywhere. But basically what it was a giant scare tactic. Like if you just were willing to lie to the police and say, I live in this area. And if they said, well, show me proof, it's like, you don't have the right to ask me for ID so that I can go to my fucking house because you're blocking the road. So like, if you just had the balls to, lie to their face, then yeah, you could get in. But it did succeed in scaring a lot of people away, right? Because it was basically like a military style checkpoint system,
Right.
like throughout the whole downtown core. So it scared the shit out of a lot of people, right?
It was definitely like a little intimidating enough that we were like trying to get our story straight. Like, oh, you're this guy, and I'm with CBC, and you're
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So there was that, and then I left on the Thursday morning, and as I was leaving, like to go back to the farm, I stayed with another person at their hotel that night. And so whenever I left to go back, as I was driving down Bank Street, I got the video of all the tow trucks coming in, like a fleet of tow trucks. They had blocked the intersection at Bank and Queen Elizabeth, or River. What's the other one? Colonel By. One of them, anyways, can't remember which one. And they were basically just like, and that's whenever I knew it was happening. And so that was the Friday morning was when it started, and it started near the Rito Center, right? They started by clearing out that section, and then by the end of the day, they had cleared out all the way to Chateau Laurier, basically beyond Chateau Laurier, going to the to Parliament. So that night I went back in, and there was still a lot of people down there, but there was basically a police line, right? It was
So from what I understand, like the police pushed up and like were like creating a line to get people away from any of the trucks that they wanted to tow, and then they had like a fleet of tow trucks ready to come and take them all away, and then beat the shit out of the truckers, like that Sazba guy, the Romanian trucker, and many others. And then they just took them away, and then they just kind of ended up ultimately containing everybody in that square block by the end of Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was, I don't know, they took a long time putting that plan together, and it's a shame that the truckers weren't more organized to stop it, but.
Well, it's good that they had that inclination to do it. Hopefully next time something like this happens, there'll be a bit more strategy. But yeah, it's always a fine line to walk, like, because like you were saying, it feels like there needed to be some more pushback for sure. But things can easily devolve into something that you don't want them to be, and then it gets out of your control. So it's just like, you really need excellent leadership when you're dealing with people who are like, spend billions of dollars in order to set up traps for you, right?
Well, huge. Yeah. I mean, there's a catch-22 here, because it's like, yeah, if the truckers had resisted, if the protesters had resisted any more than they did, which was basically nothing. Like I said, it was literally just, we're going to stand in the way. We're not going to push back. We're literally just going to allow ourselves to be slowly pushed back. You know what I mean? That was the extent of resistance. There was none. There was no resisting arrest. Nobody resisted arrest. Nobody fought back. Nobody hit a police officer. No, nobody was damaging police equipment. Nobody was running, you know, or even like, you know, there's like, think about this, like, in terms like the IRA, or not the IRA, but like the Irish protesters throughout, they had some great tactics for dealing with riot police that were not necessarily violent, but they involved things like throwing, what were they called, like tar balloons, you know, balloons, or spraying them with like, you know, black glossy paint to fuck up their weapons, to basically, you know, destroy their riot shields and make them like those types of tactics.
We need to become Antifa, essentially.
Well, yeah, exactly, right.
In a sense, yeah.
If this is a Black Lives Matter thing, imagine what would have happened. Like, imagine the way this would have been viewed.
So when you're saying Irish, are you talking about like recently with their migrant protests, or like the IRA?
No, like the old ones, the ones against the British and things like that. Like,
okay.
Northern Ireland used to have riots every fucking weekend, right?
Right, right. Because of British colonialism or whatnot.
At dealing with the police riot squads. But regardless, the point is, like, I guess, yeah, sometimes I wish they would have resisted more, or I wish we would have resisted more. But in the same token, it's like, well, then they would have had exactly what they, if somebody had fucking, like, just imagine this for a second. If one police vehicle had been, you know, turned over and set on fire. Like, imagine the way the media would have spun that, right? I mean, this is something that BLM and Antifa, they do all the time. But, yeah, and this is in Canada too, by the way. Canadian, like, do you not remember when Montreal vehicles have been firebombed? Or Montreal police vehicles, or, you know, when RCMP vehicles were being destroyed? I think 4 were destroyed by a First Nations band, right? And set on fire during one of those rail blockades.
Well, wasn't there during the actual freedom convoy, like 20 native protesters came in with axes and attacked like I think it was like a pipeline.
It was literally on this. It was either this, like, 1 year ago today or the day after. It was like right at the same time period as all this happening. And no, I don't know that it was a native band. It was an eco-terrorist group of some kind. And it seemed like, according to witnesses, because there's witnesses of what happened, they were professional. They knew what they were doing. So
interesting. So you have a bunch of guys stumbling their way into a protest like this just out of the sheer tenacity and like having had enough. And these guys are treated like the terrorists, as if, and then they retroactively connect all these dots to say that they're plotting and planning and scheming, and that they're taking orders from Russia and whatnot. But then you have like very coordinated professionals using weapons like axes to do something with like more violent within 1 day or a couple hours than the whole freedom convoy.
Yes. Yep. I mean, you could argue that the RCMP did the same thing in Coutts. They went onto private property, destroyed private, excavation equipment, and nothing ever happened. That's literally a crime. They committed crimes in the tens of thousands of dollars, like shit that you would go to jail for. They just did it.
Well, when you create a so-called emergency act, then, you know, they could get away with whatever they want, and they'll just tell you to fuck off.
Wasn't in place at that time. They did that before the Emergency Measures Act was even in place.
Wow. So do you know how they're swinging that then? Like, are they having to face the music for that at all? Like, do they have an excuse, or is it just completely glossed over? Maybe that's why they're not talking about Coutts as much as, you know, you'd think that they had a slam dunk there with the way that they present it, but not really, actually. I don't think they want people digging deeper into that.
What happened in Coutts with that equipment, which was absolutely a crime, just a blatant fucking crime committed by the RCMP. Everybody knows it. They admitted it. They said that they did it. It's a fucking crime. They should have been arrested. The officers and the whoever was leading that operation should have been arrested and charged with criminal offenses. No, what they got was, fuck you. We're the cops. We can do whatever the fuck we want. Go fuck yourself. That's policing in Canada. And if you need another example of that, look at the RCMP texts between each other, the RCMP musical ride texting each other was disgusting. Not one officer was fired from that. Not one officer was reprimanded for that. The RCMP investigated the RCMP and found the RCMP did no wrong. Just like the government just investigated the government and found that the government was not guilty of government overreach. Welcome to justice in this fucking country.
Right. Well, you know, the oversight committees, it seems like in any case, they're always just one step away. They're always like one link away. And they give the answer that they want them to give, right? Like, you see this with CSIS, too. Like, CERC was like one of the committees overseeing CSIS. And it seems like they treat them with kids' gloves. And it seems like it was put there for that purpose. It's kind of like a controlled opposition steam valve, or, you know, a pressure release valve for people to think that there is accountability and there is oversight when there's really not.
I mean, the first thing that should have been said is, you know, regarding this commission, which, like, you know, to be fair, I don't know the mechanics of this inquiry. Like, I know they have to do it, but, like, think about how absurd this is. So if the government invokes the Emergency Measures Act, then the government, I mean, they have to do it. It's not like they have a choice, but they get to decide. So the government gets to decide who's going to be their judge on whether or not their actions were justified. It doesn't matter if Justice Rouleau used to be related to Justin Trudeau, or if there was a connection to them, right? That doesn't matter. Just the very notion that the government is going to decide who sits over their, you know, their trial basically for wrongdoing is fucking ridiculous. Well, imagine this, like, imagine this for all the lefties that are basically, you know, blowing this off and just being like, that's the way it works. Okay, let me throw this at you. Imagine if the conservatives got to decide who was the justice. Right? Would that be fair? Would it be fair if Pierre Poilievre was the one who got to decide who was going to judge the Liberals? Would that be all right with you? You fucking, like, inbred fucks that think this is a great idea, that this works so well because it worked out in your favor. Imagine if it was the reverse. Would you think that that was a fair trial? Pierre Poilievre is going to choose the judge that's basically deciding Justin Trudeau's fate.
Yeah, I mean, it's all fucked.
I heard a rumor that they're even related. Is that true?
Yes, they used to be.
Pierre Poilievre and Trudeau?
No.
Sorry.
Justice Rouleau, Paul Rouleau, and Justin Trudeau were related by marriage, not close.
Oh, okay, like in-law type thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have here, welcome, Leigh. Good to see you.
Dropped a bomb on me. I forgot to bring my cardigan. I don't know. It's in the laundry, maybe. I see it's like a theme going on. That's what you meant by dropping a bomb. Okay. Like, I was dropping... I thought you meant you were taking a shit. And I was like, oh, okay. No.
Dropping a bomb right now. I'll see if I can get my camera ready. Okay, Leigh, TMI.
Well, you let me know last minute. Like, I didn't know you were streaming today.
I didn't know I was going to stream either. I was like, fuck it, I'll do it. Like, I have all this extra content and no one's streaming right now. And, you know, I'm feeling very nostalgic of last year, so why not?
Yeah, it's all very hard to watch, actually. I've been looking at the footage from Derek's stream, and it's very... I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. It's literally, you're watching. I remember, I don't know, being there. It's like watching Canada die in real time.
Yeah,
depressing.
That's exactly what it felt like.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it felt like.
Well, I feel more so. Well, I wasn't there when all that crazy stuff was happening. I was collecting all the footage and making compilations to like show what was happening and stuff. But I do think that, hey, I went down there and I participated in whatever way I could, and I'll always have that story, like, to my future children, all in the future. Like, if they ask, what were you doing when when Canada fell, and we're living in this dystopian world now, I could say that I did something at least. So I try to look at it like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's something that gets left out there too. Whenever they raided the Coventry staging area, Tyler and Shane were there that night, but like I was talking to the police, and like I remember saying, like, there's people that are willing to die down there, right? That's true. There was many people that were willing to die down there. They just weren't willing to kill. That was the difference. If the cops had pulled out guns and started shooting, there's people that would have stood there. They just weren't willing to pull the trigger back. That's the difference.
Yeah, that's why I have mixed feelings about it, because like it's, you're watching Canada die in real time, but then you see all these Canadians that are willing to die on that hill for freedom and for what the core values Canada stands on, right? It's like, yeah.
There's something powerful about that. And like, in a way, disciplined, but it seems like they need that discipline and that that willingness to die for a cause. It needs like a proper leadership and like more clarity around it, right? But it's easier said than done, obviously, right? Like, I don't know how you would mobilize people and get them to listen and get them to follow like one solid leadership. But I think both our like the freedom side has learned a lot from this, and the government has also learned a lot from this. They use this as a trial run for things that are going to happen in the future, I'm sure, and they'll have a better way to crack down on it. So the game is on, really.
I'm not sure it ever will happen again. I'm not sure it ever will.
Right.
Even the truly disgusting part about that farce of an inquiry is that, I'd like to, I don't know if Greg was the first to call this one out, but, I'll assume that Greg was the first one I heard say this, that the most likely outcome of that ruling was we need better laws to deal with this stuff. The government needs more power.
Yeah.
I nailed that. And so like I was thinking, best case scenario, what we would see is something like the inquiry rule that that the government was not justified in invoking it, but that it would be kind of nuanced with this idea that like, but what else were they supposed to do? Because they had no more options, right? So like technically there was they definitely did not meet the legal definition for invoking the Emergency Measures Act. That was brought up over and over again, that the legal justification is Section 2 of the CSIS Act, and it absolutely did not meet that, okay? So first of all, he shouldn't have ruled that, but you knew it was coming. You knew they were going to say that, well, we need better laws then. So now what are they going to, they're going to go amend the Emergency Measures Act. They're going to give themselves additional powers. There's probably going to be some new government agency that's developed out of this, which is basically a Stasi, right? So like all of these horrible things are going to come out of this because of the way that this justice ruled. It wasn't good enough for him to just say, well, it was justified and they did what they needed to do to end a difficult situation. No, that's not good enough. It's not only was the government right, we need to give them more power because that's how right they were.
Right. Well, they definitely got a slam dunk with it, in the sense that, yeah, they will have not only that new kind of commission or oversight or ability to use emergency act or whatever it's going to be, but yeah, you're right. The Stasi, they'll be able to gather intel on everybody proactively now. They were already doing that now, but they'll be able to do that like ×5, ×10, and then all the narratives about IMVEs. That's exactly what they want for all the free speech laws to come in. And, they'll go for one psyop and then they'll exhaust the shit out of it till it gets to the point where even the normies don't want to fucking deal with something like COVID anymore. So then they'll ditch that, and now they're going for free speech, I think is next. And the climate stuff, who knows when that's going to happen. We already see it kind of bubbling up, right? But the free speech will be the key that will enable them to crack down on all of us like the Stasi.
Absolutely, they're going to do that. They've been setting the stage for this for some time. Like I like to think of, I think 2020 to 2030 is going to be a three part play, a theater production here. We've just finished the first act. So what are
Mhm.
there's right now, it's, everything's died down, right? Things are quieter. There's not as much, bullshit going on. Well, just wait. It's because they're, right now it's intermission. They're backstage preparing the scenes for the next, act. So like get ready because it's gonna come. And all the things you just mentioned are part of this. Whether it's the Bill C-11, the gun control, the attacks on farming, the desire to centralize production of food, the 15-minute cities, the digital ID, the central bank digital currencies, all of this is coming up in the next 3 years.
Well, also the Canadian government, when they invoked the EMA, they broadened their ability to share information with financial institutions. And I think that's why Jeremy's bank account was taken away, because that whole law never went away. Their ability to do that, to share information, your banking information with ceases, that never went away. The convoy may have ended, the Emergencies Act may have ended, but that never went away. That's still in force. That's 100%. They can do that at any time.
I think all different institutions that have your basic information will be allowed, CSIS or whatever other organization will be allowed access to it. You even see in the online harms bill that they're drafting up, in their workshops, they're talking about how they have this online harms regulator specifically for Canada, where it has to filter through them, and they get like a say on whether something gets shown or not in Canada. Like this happens in Germany, and why if someone reports your tweet, you'll see that it says under German law you have been reported, but you have or haven't broken the law, so your tweet will stay available in Germany or something like that. People get these weird notifications. Well, that's coming to Canada. And they're also talking about giving basic subscriber information directly to the authorities or CSIS or whoever wants it, like RCMP. So this is all built into that online harms bill, which many people don't even know that they're talking about this. They're sidetracked with like Bill is C-11, the one that just passed.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know what's going on with that. It seems so unclear.
The C-11 hasn't actually passed. So
No.
the Senate revised C-11. So now it goes back to the House of Commons, which they have to review the changes. And if they agree, if the House of Commons or the Liberals, if they agree to the changes that were made to C-11, then they'll accept it and it'll receive royal assent. But if they don't, they send it back to the Senate to debate and vote on again. So it could be like a circus. Like they could keep proposing different amendments to the bill before it could fizzle out. Those are the two options that can happen. So the fact that it was passed is kind of like a misconception. And I did look into it. I thought, it did pass. And then I actually looked into what was going on, and it hasn't passed yet. They haven't come to an agreement on it, basically.
The point is that it absolutely will pass at some point in the future, in some form or other. And then it lays the groundwork for this online harms bill that Edgy brought up. It was Bill C-36 in its original form, and it'll probably change, but that was the one it was when Bill C-11 was Bill C-10. There was this, 1-2 punch. It was Bill C-10, Bill C-36. One set the stage for the others. And the online harms bill, the Bill C-36, that was the fucking really scary one. Bill C-10 was bad enough. Bill C-36 was like, this is not an understatement. Bill C-36 was Soviet-style like censorship law. It was something it was like North Korea, communist China, like pick some totalitarian regime. That's what it was like. There was no way of kind of watering it down to the normie to be seen as like, well, we're just trying to protect Canadian content, or we're just no. Bill C-36 was Stasi level censorship.
I actually have what was contained in it, and we narrowly missed this. So they proposed it in mid-2021, and then they scrapped it because of the election, right?
Yeah.
And that's only because of the election. Like, they wanted to push it through. And people were complaining about Bill C-11, and it's C-11, right? I'm getting
I think yes, it is C11 now, but I'm pretty sure it was
It was
Bill
C10
C10 before
Okay,
the
yeah.
2021 election. So yeah,
But anyways, Bill C-36, like there's already like a hate speech law in Canada, but it's kind of like reserved for only the most egregious cases. So people like us probably like anti-hate probably wants us to be charged with those, and that's why they promote something like Bill C-36. But anyways, it basically just extends that to anyone. Anyone can claim someone is likely to commit a hate propaganda offense or hate crime, and then the accused would be forced to enter a recognizance where they have to adhere to conditions that include wearing an electronic monitoring device, having a curfew, restricted traveling, refrain from drugs and alcohol, and be forced to give blood samples in order to prove their sobriety, among several other conditions. Yeah. And Bill C-36 would have also brought back Section 13. So on top of like just saying that it is literally a criminal offense if someone thinks that you're likely to commit a hate crime or something, or a hate propaganda offense, whatever the hell that is. They also wanted to bring back Section 13, which was an addition to the Charter of Human Rights, or whatever you call that, where they added in, you can accuse somebody else of violating your civil rights, basically, because they were committing hate speech online. And this brings that back, except for the person accusing you doesn't even have to, they can remain completely anonymous. Yeah. And like it's not a criminal charge, but basically you have to pay like $10,000 or something, like a $10,000 fine, and you can't speak again about whatever topic. You might even be banned from the internet. And then obviously if you break that, then, or you don't pay it, then you could go to jail. So, it might as well be criminal.
Yeah, that bill was like, I can't believe that was ever even introduced. Like it's crazy levels of, like, it goes beyond the things that we see in the UK or Germany. Like it was what was it? A retroactive thought crime law too. They could ding you for something that you posted before the law was even enacted, right? They could come after you for things you've said online in the past.
It's retroactive.
Yeah. Like literally, we'll go back and look through your social media history, and if we see something we don't like, we'll use this bill against you. That was part of it. Like crazy. Like that was a bill that, like, whenever I was talking with this about, like, about this with, say, Jeremy or Derek or other people, I was like, if they pass this bill, we have to leave the fucking country. Like that's not a joke.
For real.
It's a joke to me.
Why is that a joke to you? They could literally charge you with a hate crime for something you posted online. That you could scrub your social media, and if somebody else has it saved somewhere and they post it and it's you saying it, then you could go to jail.
I'm not surprised. Nothing shocks me anymore.
Does that not have intention though? Because like, don't in order to commit a crime, don't you have to have like intent? I forget what the Latin term or whatever, mens rea intent. Like, I don't think that's necessarily true, but it's something like, oh, is your YouTube thing on private or unlisted? Like, I think it could get to that point where they're grasping at straws with you. Yeah, it's true. It's crazy. Like, how far back can they go?
It was obvious what I mean, look, I'm not saying they're going to go after, Joe Blow because he posted something on Twitter that, talked about black crime statistics or something like that. I mean, they were going to use that to target people specifically, like Jeremy, like Pat King, or like.
Well, perfect example is Chris Guy. Yeah, like at least with anti-hate, they go back like 10 years to his Facebook posts. And they're like, "Haha, gotcha," and they use that against him. Now Bernie Farber is in Parliament, talking about with this new Holocaust denial bill that Jeremy, Chris Guy, and Pat King are all people that he wants targeted.
Yes.
And what did Chris Guy say about it? 10 years ago on his Facebook, he said something about that historical event.
And it's a good thing you bring him up, because he's the one that is now helping shape this, whatever new iteration of this online arms bill comes out. He's the one that's helping shape it. He's
Yep.
the first professional listed out of 12 on that online arms panel board. And the second is Amara Marsingath, which is good friends with the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Always seems to go in lockstep with them. He's quoted in the same articles, writes papers with Kurt Phillips. Like they're the same thing. So like anti-hate, and again, like we just saw, who did the Trudeau government decide was going to be their Islamophobia czar? A former Canadian anti-hate board member. Wow, I'm shocked. The Canadian Anti-Hate Network is shaping liberal policy, and they're the ones who are going to help decide who is guilty and who is innocent of hate think whenever they get this bill finally passed through. And that's
I like that word,
thought.
hate think.
Yeah,
I
because
don't think I've ever heard that before.
these people are extremists. They're fucking communists. That's not a euphemism. That's not me that's literally what they are. They're commies. They're avowed commies. If you sign up to the Canadian Anti-Hate Network's newsletter, it goes to Socialist Fight Back, an openly Marxist organization focused on revolution in Canada. This is who the Liberal government is relying on as their hate experts. Avowed socialists, Marxist communists.
Well, that's why they're trying, like, all across Western countries, but yeah, with groups especially like ADL, SPLC, Anti-Hate, they're trying to rewrite history so that we cannot make sense of history, so they could just constantly say that, oh, the Holocaust, and you guys are all, you have the same ideology, and you're gonna cause the next one. That's what they're trying to convince all the normies and everyday people that we are. And when they can rewrite history like that, when we try to bring these things up, it falls on deaf ears. But yeah, like communists, Marxists have killed significantly more people throughout world history.
100 million people in the 20th century.
And
Arguably a lot more.
And it never went away. They actually won when you think about it. What happened with Soviet Union during World War II? They took control of East Germany, did they not? And they installed the Stasi police.
I was listening to, I had the privilege of going to an event where Christine Anderson spoke yesterday. She was in Calgary. She's doing her Canadian tour. So I went to that. She spoke at length about what East Germany was like. She was in West Germany. So she grew up under the Iron Curtain, right? But thankfully for her was on the West German side of it. And she was talking about, the day the wall came down and the crazy things that were going on in East Germany under Soviet rule or Soviet puppet rule. But regardless, and I just want to jump back here because there's this Holocaust denial bill that ties into this, which, who introduced that?
I think there was some conservative MP, Kevin Wog, in Saskatchewan. He introduced it.
Yes.
But then it got picked.
Voted for it.
Pardon?
Pierre Poilievre voted yes on it. There were some conservative MPs that abstained, I believe, or voted nay. But Pierre was one that voted yay. And now, I don't know if you guys have heard this. What's next in the same line of thinking? I think Leigh knows. But they're talking about a new kind of denialism that needs to be treated as a crime.
Yeah, the hate speech law for the residential school burials, mass graves. We're not allowed to question those. I literally had this queued up because I put it on my Telegram yesterday because there's something called residential school denialism, and it sounds a lot like the Holocaust. It's like the Canadian version of you're going straight to jail if you question the mass graves, okay? So it says, what is denialism? Residential school denialism is not the outright denial of the Indian residential school system's existence, but rather the rejection or misrepresentation of basic facts about residential schooling to undermine truth and reconciliation efforts. It sounds like a little bit kind of like
it is exactly the same thing as Holocaust denial. And this
we can't question it.
What free speech advocates in this country were trying to bring to people's attention whenever they came out with this Holocaust denial bill and saying that it was egregious and disgusting, not because, and again, immediately if you spoke out against this bill, you were labeled as a Holocaust denier or as anti-Semitic or something like that, when in reality, most of the people that were against this bill saw what it was. It was an inroad to curtailing and regulating free speech, and it was going to be used to do this to other things. So first it'll be the residential schools. They'll make it a crime, just like they did with denying the Holocaust. And then it'll be, you know, if you deny the existence of trans people, if you say that trans people don't exist, that there's somebody that has a mental illness, that's a crime. And if you speak out against, you know, affirmative action, that's a crime too, because you're racist.
Just wait until you start going to jail for being a Christian or quoting the Bible, because that's going to happen too.
Josh Alexander was arrested for speaking the gospel into a megaphone on the street.
Yeah.
And that's not the first time that's happened. Do you guys remember during COVID, there was pastors that were being arrested literally for preaching on the street? There was a very famous one in Vancouver. I forget his name, but he's a street preacher.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, he was fined and then imprisoned for refusing to, you know, remain in lockdown, basically, and going out on the street and preaching the gospel.
So how do you think it would go down if somebody got, you know, arrested and charged for residential school denialism? Because I feel like they would say, hey, did you go and see what that ground penetrating radar was actually saying? Did you dig it up? Did you get samples? Do we know that those kids died there? And then they would not let you do any excavation or do any scientific research, you know? And this actually happened with Holocaust revisionists or denialists, whatever you want to call them. They tried to go and get evidence, and the people who went and got evidence, they got banned from, they were professors, they got banned from their universities, they got arrested for several years in Germany for doing that. They brought it in for a trial. The trial did not go the way that they wanted to here in Canada, and they want to avoid that ever happening again. So if you do get caught with one of these things, they're not even going to let you have a defense. Your only defense will be like, please, I regret everything I said, like in kissing their boot, basically.
It's Dory Love in Vancouver, and he was arrested for anti-gay hate speech because he was preaching the gospel.
Yeah,
so.
They're gonna make Christianity, if not outright illegal, just like something that is basically only able to be practiced underground at some point in the future. Guarantee that.
Yeah,
they absolutely will.
That's biblical. That will happen.
Yeah. So like
I'll be right back, guys.
Who we got here now? Oh, Edgy's saying he's going to be right. Okay. So, but what we have with this, again, it's the same thing with this, not Holocaust now, with these residential school denialism. It's like, I've literally seen this comparison. Keen Bexty called this a hoax, right? Because it is, at least right now. There's no evidence. There's literally zero evidence that's been provided to, you know, back up this narrative that's being pushed.
Well, the professor that actually did the investigation said you're going to need to dig it up to actually prove that there's anything down there, because with the sonar and technical equipment that they had, she couldn't tell what was down there. It could have been tree roots for all we know. Like,
was it the one outside of Kamloops?
Yes.
The literal chief of the tribe in that area said these graves have been here forever. They used to be marked by wooden crosses. The wooden crosses are gone.
Well, because, I mean, there's poor families, right, who can't afford a funeral. So they would use those sort of things if they couldn't afford an actual funeral, or because that costs money.
Yeah.
So
well, it's not just that. It's look, a lot of this was in the early 20th century or the late 19th century. And I don't know if people are aware of this, but kids used to die a lot in those times. Like, you know, like the survival rate of children was like 60% to the age of 3. So, like, you know, kids died.
Wasn't there like a polio outbreak or something around that time?
Yeah, there's all kinds of reasons that kids died frequently. And so basically what they've done is they've conflated this idea that there's a lot of child graves with, well, clearly they were just murdering indigenous children and then putting them in mass graves, which is an obvious lie because they're individual grave plots. And the fucking chief of the area has said that they knew about this. They were marked graves. It was never an unmarked mass grave. They were marked individual graves. Now, if you want to argue that some of these kids were murdered, then I don't know how you're going to prove that. But like, maybe there's something to that. I don't know. But the claim that they're pushing is basically that the Catholic Church was mass murdering Indigenous people and dumping them in mass graves like they were like some kind of Holocaust thing. Like
it's so ridiculous when you think about what they're actually implying. And you go, so a bunch of nuns are just sadistic. Like this is like like an Eli Roth horror movie, essentially. Like, what are you even talking about? Nuns were mass murdering kids. Now, were there, bad things that happened? I would assume so, yeah. But, like, mass murdering, absolutely not. That is what they're trying to give off, though. Like, they omit enough information so it leaves that in your imagination. And then you do know that atrocities did happen to some agreed abuse, right? And then it conflates the two things in most people's minds, and they never really parse what is true and what isn't.
Exactly. And so when Cian Bexty called it a hoax, I went into the comments of his Twitter, and they're like, how is this legal? This is literally the same thing as Holocaust denial.
Oh,
like that's exactly what they're presenting it as. They're saying it's the same thing as denying the Holocaust, which again, I don't, the idea that you denying the Holocaust is somehow a crime is absurd to me for a litany of reasons, but we don't need to get into that. The reality is they're basically trying to make, again, it's just a stepping stone to anything you say that contradicts the state narrative is a crime. That's what they want. They wanted that with COVID. They want that now with these, residential school graveyards. They want it with they want it with everything. And if you want a glimpse into the future of where this is headed, Canada, go look at the UK, go look at Germany. There's one came out early in February. It's now a crime to post pictures of dinghies arriving to England. You can be charged for posting photos of the boats of migrants invading your country.
It's one of those things.
Arrest you and put you in jail if you show pictures of people invading your country on the internet.
That's us next.
No context, nothing. If you show the pictures, that's a crime.
No one's going to be allowed to be showing pictures of like Roxham Road eventually, because I swear the UK is like 5 years ahead of us. So
yeah, and if you want another example, this weekend, members of this Mark Collette's group there in the UK, Patriotic Alternative.
Shout outs to them. They're awesome. I just gotta say
I think they are doing good work too. I do. Like I said this before, like if you want to get into, look, I don't know if I understand or I agree with, or, I don't think it should be a crime, but like white nationalism in Canada and America is, to me, I think a little offbeat. Like, I don't know. I just like, I don't think they should be banned from talking about white nationalism, but I also don't think that, they're on the right path because they've always been, there's always been.
I get what you're saying. Britain is a different situation because it's like they have nowhere else where they even came from originally. Like it's insane. Europeans can't even have their own homelands where it's just. But I would also say that they're doing it very well. And anytime I've seen white nationalism in Canada, it was very poor. And it's like a bunch of people compensating for the fact that they're, maybe not the best in life otherwise. So they're clinging to being white. But I would also say that like the demographic change, I think that is a totally fair game and one of the most important issues that they do talk about. But I think there's a different solution for here in Canada. We should be able to talk about it and, tell everybody what's going on and reduce to even a full halt migration. But that's so kind of where I am at.
I agree. I think Patriotic Alternative is a good organ. They have the right idea, basically. It's peaceful organization and resistance to the mass migration and the destruction of the British national ethnicity and identity, right? That's their whole thing, and it's all peaceful. It's all done, or like it basically consists of banner drops and flyer handouts and protests and there's nothing malicious about it, right?
I have to say Mark Collette, he is an exemplary person of leadership, I would say. Like he
Yeah, I
keeps
think
he keeps like he leads by example in being non-violent, but also being level-headed, and I don't know what else to say about him, but yeah, does
yeah.
a great job.
Anyways, two teenagers were arrested in Scotland this weekend for handing out patriotic alternative flyers for hate speech. They were handing out flyers that said by 2060, Britain will be, or white Britons will be a minority in their own country. That got them arrested for hate speech.
It's
Two
so
teenagers
crazy because it's like it's talking about your own group, saying, "Hey, look, we are on the chopping block here. We're becoming like an endangered subspecies, essentially." Yet that's still considered hate speech. Like, I agree that it's best to, like, defend yourself as opposed to going after other people, especially if you're doing something like banners and stuff, or handing out flyers and pamphlets. But even that, protecting yourself or saying what's happening to you, that'll get you fucking hate speech charge. That's insane.
Well, there was a great. So there's another group. What are they called? Renewed Britannia, or Britannia Renewed. I forget. West. There was a great. I posted this on my Telegram. Wesley Russell. He was asking a conservative MP in the UK about the migration, and he basically just laid it out perfect in 2 minutes. He said more than the conservatives in the UK have said in 30 years. And basically, what he said is like these people coming over in dinghies. They're claiming that they're refugees from what? They're coming over in dinghies from France. Like what are they refugees from? The same thing is true of Roxham Road here in Canada. They're claiming they're refugees from what?
Colorado. They're from Colorado.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's going
That's
mask off on the whole refugee claim.
I was actually told that. Like, because I've been to Roxham Road a few times, and I've actually asked the migrants where they're coming from. Like, so where are you coming from? Like, is it a war-torn country? Like, is it Haiti? Like, where are you from? And they're like, Colorado. So, yeah, they've lived in Colorado for a few years and decided to, once they heard about the safe third country agreement that we have with the United States, they know that if they cross into Canada illegally, that all of our social services are at their beck and call for free.
So they were being oppressed by the war crime of not getting free benefits in Colorado.
This was like when Trump was going to kick them all out, right? So Obama let them in after the earthquake or whatever it was, and Trump said he was going to kick them all out. It was a 2-year process, and they were only allowed to stay for a short amount of time. And I think a lot of them, when Justin Trudeau put out that tweet saying, if you're fleeing persecution, it was right around the same time too. If you go back and look at it, it was perfectly timed. That's when they all started coming over here, and they caught that loophole that if they flee the United States, because normally you're supposed to seek asylum in the first country you land in. That's the migrant law. Like, that's what you're supposed to do if you're fleeing a war-torn country. But this safe third country agreement we have with the States is, I don't know, that's the loophole.
Shouldn't they be going to countries that are more similar to them, their culture and all their language, all these different things? Like, do those countries not want them? And if so, why don't they want them? And
there's a bazillion examples of this, but yeah, the refugees from Syria, where do they go? They go to Turkey first, and then Turkey pushes them into Greece. That's why Greece is literally building a wall now. They're doing they're building the fucking wall because they're sick of being swarmed with migrants that are just, basically rampaging through their country on their way to France or Germany or Austria or the UK. So Greece is tired of it. Bulgaria has been doing this forever. They basically said, fuck you, no. Like, you're not just going to walk into our country and then rape and pillage your way to Germany. That's not happening.
Ireland is finally getting... Sorry, go ahead.
This was brought up by this Wesley Russell guy in this question that he asked the MPs. Like, these aren't families. They're fighting age males coming here in dinghies over the channel from France and then demanding housing and benefits and free care. And then, so we're putting these... But by the way, illegal immigration is a crime, right? It's a crime. So they're criminals right off the bat. They should be treated like criminals, not refugees. It's a crime. So not only are they criminals that were then using, British tax dollars to basically house in 5-star hotels. We're criminalizing any UK person who speaks out against this and basically saying you're not allowed to say that. And even more so, like I just said, not only are you not allowed to speak out against them housing these migrants on your tax dollars, you're not allowed to even post a picture that it's happening. God forbid you take a photo of one of these dinghies arriving on your shores and post it on the internet. That's a crime, bitch.
That's where we're headed.
Yeah.
That's where we're headed.
Did you hear about that that kid that got sentenced for like 11 years in jail for making videos online?
Yep.
So I looked more into that, and apparently he was like, yeah, one of those real accelerationists, like Dylan Roof type wannabe guys, and he was making videos like trying to, I guess, convince other people that they should do something like that, and using clips from, past videos of that. But the way that they presented that, and they also found him trying to like 3D print his own shit, but they presented that, I think, as a scare tactic for the people who are doing things legally and lawfully. And Mark Collette and those guys had to like tell their audience, like, look, that's what that guy was doing this. Yes, maybe 10 years is too much for something like that compared to like all these rapists and other kind of people who get out like because they had a sexual emergency and they were a migrant or something crazy like that. But I think that they're trying to push a story like that to spread fear in everybody else that you are going to go to jail if you make videos that we don't like or commit hate speech online, right?
Yeah, Henrik from Red Ice did a whole bit on No-Go Zone on Wednesday. It's free if you guys want to go back and check this. But so the verdict came in for the Buffalo shooter, right? It was just Peyton something. I forget his last name, but the verdict came in. And so if you look at, like, I don't know what that was. I don't know if that kid is a schizo, right? He apologized and like took back everything he did and was, I think, broke out in tears, like whatever. Yeah. I don't know. Fuck, I don't really care about this. Like, he's an idiot. Whether he was groomed or he is a schizo, like, it doesn't matter. But the really important takeaway from this is that they're now going to try and criminalize any of the things that he talked about in that manifesto.
That's the point, yes.
The reality is a lot of the things that he talked about or made reference to in that manifesto are legitimate concerns.
Right. It included everything from like Breitbart articles to like American Renaissance articles like Jared Taylor or like, those closer to white nationalist type outfits. And all they're doing is like cross-referencing real FBI statistics to paint a better, more accurate picture of what's really going on with racial relations and crime in whatever country it is. And yeah, they don't want you to know that information, so they're gonna once again make a false equivalency of the actions that he did and what was on his manifesto, right? And the weird thing too, I don't know if you know this, I've talked about this in my stream multiple times and with Leigh on stream. There was a retired FBI agent in this guy's Discord, the Buffalo kid, and he was one of the main like 5 or 6 people who he is in most close contact with. And this got picked up by a local news outfit in Buffalo, and they had like confirmation of it, but then it kind of just disappeared. So this kid sent out his plans like half an hour or 45 minutes before, including to this retired FBI agent who was talking to this kid, God knows why, whether he was trying to get the intel and try to stop it, but clearly he didn't stop it because there was forewarning, and this kid just went out and did it, and now the story has disappeared. We haven't heard from this Discord FBI agent groomer, and was this guy potentially giving him the stuff, and then this goes into the manifesto, then it all becomes illegal in the future, and all part of the same tragedy put into law?
The same thing happens here. You remember, so in, 2021 in London, this kid, right? How old was he? 19, 20?
Yeah.
You guys know where I'm going?
No.
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly, but I can say we don't have a damn piece of information of it yet, except for... Sorry, go ahead.
this is not me picking on Leigh, but this kind of emphasizes my point is people don't even remember, right? And you'll remember as soon as I say it, but 19-year-old kid runs over Muslim family, must have been a terror, right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens? They blow this up. They say that it was a hate crime, that he did this because they were Muslim, even though his best friend was apparently Muslim, but whatever. Let's just ignore that. Let's ignore all of the evidence to the contrary. Let's ignore the fact that he was probably extremely mentally ill, that he had severe problems, right? Let's ignore all of that and just focus on the fact that he ran over a Muslim family because he hates Muslims. That's all that happened. And then once we've blasted this narrative everywhere, then let's never talk about it again and memory hold the entire thing.
I remember that
Well-
now. And he
well,
was
they
wearing
are
like
yeah.
he was
The
wearing
only
a
time-
bulletproof vest or something too. But it was like he
No,
was
he
going
had a-
paintballing.
He had a paintball vest.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I remember
So-
now.
Coming home from paintballing or airsoft or something.
So
like
here's
that.
the information. I kind of, not really a deep dive, but I think I have all the information on this that was available. Is that so? First of all, I think it's the terrorism charge that has enabled everybody, like the hate-related terrorism charge. Like, you would assume that they would give him that charge if there was evidence of that, right? So I think that's why that narrative has gained legitimacy. Otherwise, all that other evidence that you said, like his friend at work saying that, who's Muslim, saying, I didn't know that he was like this, or he never showed any signs of that to me. His parents did say that he was very difficult and like potentially violent, especially like dealing with the divorce and stuff. And then also his steering was fucked up on his truck, supposedly, and he had told that friend a few days earlier, and they had like looked and kind of like, finicked with it a little bit. And yes, he was wearing the vest and stuff, and it seemed like he was going paintballing before. And I also heard that he was on shrooms or something when it happened. So I don't know how true that is. That was just like a hearsay. But anyways, 2 years later, we still know almost nothing except for add-on is that the police didn't find anything on his Facebook.
Exactly.
But apparently he's been on the dark web.
Either way, the reality is they claim that he was, whatever the term you want to use here, groomed or led to, by. They had no evidence of that. They had no evidence that he was involved in any groups that were anti-Muslim or anything like that. They had no proof of this. They just pushed that narrative. And then they never talked about it again until very recently it was briefly brought up, conveniently, whenever they appointed their new Islamophobia czar. They wheeled that out just for a day, and then
right.
went back and just conveniently forgot to talk about it ever again.
It'll be pretty wild if it comes back that he had nothing, like it was not Islamophobic related at all or anything of that nature, right? But of course they'll just memory hole it. But are they going to go correct the record to say, because they're using the Islamophobia czar thing to like that as justification for it. So they can't retroactively go and say, "Oh, it looks like we didn't need it."
This is the way it works now. So, and again, too, they'll conveniently Canada. I don't know how Canada has avoided these incidences the way other countries have, but like whether it's the States, the UK is terrible for this. Germany is terrible. Like the migrant on native population crime it's crazy. Like if you're even remotely tied into German or UK sources, every day it's every fucking day there's another incidence of this. And if this was 2005, the media would be going nuts about Islamic terrorism. They would be calling these incidents terrorist, right? Like in Spain, right, where they had a migrant is going around attacking priests and deacons with machetes. Or in Germany, in the span of 3 days, something like 9 Germans were killed in stabbing incidents by migrants. These were these would have been considered terrorist incidents 15 years ago. Now the media just talks about it for a day and then it's gone.
Well, why do you think it's like that in those European countries and not here? I would, for one, I would say they're getting streams of migrants, other from like Turkey or right from the source of other countries, right? They're coming in on the boats, and those are the fighting age refugees, right? The males. And I think with our immigration policies, we have people from some of the same countries, but they have money to get over here. But the more they lax these immigration restrictions, like just because one person from these countries is like a good doctor or something, doesn't mean that their whole extended family that they're going to bring in here who don't have any qualifications, that they're going to be the same. And at first it seems like it's not so bad, but then, you know, a couple generations down the line and Canada is gone.
Well, that's why it's all migrants working at like Tim Hortons and stuff, because they bring their families over, right? And then they take the low wage jobs so that there's none left for like, you know, Canadians.
Yeah, there's something to what you're saying there, Edgy, as well, which is that, you know, because we don't have a direct land route or, you know, a short sea voyage, like, you know, like I said, you can pile into a dinghy and make it across the English Channel. You know, you can pile into a dinghy and get across the Adriatic. And, you know, sometimes it ends terribly, but like, you know, it's possible. Whereas
if
you're
migrants,
not going to get across the fucking Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah. If migrants can get across the Atlantic Ocean in a dinghy, you know what? They could stay.
Yeah, they deserve it. Fair enough, right? But no, the other thing to this too that I think needs to be mentioned is that part of the reason that we're not seeing as many of these crimes, or at least it doesn't appear that way in Canada, is because of the Youth Justice Act, the Youth Criminal Justice Act, which protects the names of people involved in crimes when they're under the age of 18. And so you have all of these incidents, like if you're paying attention, you should be noticing these in Toronto and in other areas where, you know, like there was one yesterday or the day before, maybe it was Friday, 2 youths were arrested in regard to a shooting outside of a high school.
Oh, yeah. I was actually looking at watching CP24 YouTube channel yesterday. Yeah, 2 17 or 18-year-olds, obviously diverse neighborhood in Toronto. They shot a 15-year-old out front of the school, went off in a stolen car that they had stolen earlier in the day, and like they went and arrested them, nabbed them the next day, and obviously we don't have any names for any of them.
Was it a handgun? Because aren't handguns banned? So how did that happen?
Yeah, that's the running joke, right? For every gun violence incident in this country now, is like, that's not possible. That's a conspiracy theory. That can't be true.
And like, what about all these Toronto like subway stabbings and stuff like that are going on every single day? Are these like, I've never actually looked into the demographics of who is causing these crimes and who it's happening to, because that would be interesting to look at as well.
Well, you can't though, Leigh, because their identities are protected by the law. That's what I'm getting at.
If you go by Coulter's law, okay, so if they say that they're not if they don't say their race in the actual publication, then you know that they're not white. If they that's literally Coulter's law. She invented that.
Well, me and you were messaging the night of the what was the Michigan school shooter in the university. I was looking up, so I typed in Michigan shooter live as it was happening before they had caught them, and the first results that came up, I think it was CNN and The Guardian, neither of them described what this person even looked like. Only one of them had the picture of the guy where you could see him. But meanwhile, on the police radar, they're saying black male, like a whole bunch of times over and over again. But apparently that doesn't come up to the news, right?
Yeah.
And they had posted his photo and everything. Yeah.
Again, too, there was, you guys remember this incidence of what was it, 6 12 to 14-year-old girls in Toronto who stomped a homeless man to death?
Yeah, for alcohol. Yeah, they were all Muslim, I'm pretty sure.
That was in Toronto?
Well, sorry, we don't know that they were all Muslim, but we didn't know their race because obviously their identity is protected by the Youth Criminal Justice Act. But we did get to see courtroom sketches where their faces are blurred, and it's pretty obvious. It's pretty obvious what race they were, or at least what race they weren't, because they all appeared to have, curly black-brown hair and, a tinge to their skin. Let's put it that way. So isn't that convenient? Like, again, there was another incident too. Youths arrested in a slashing incident. They slashed a woman's face on the TTC. And then when police tried to arrest them, it was 3 youths, 2 boys and a girl. They attacked a police officer with machete. They were arrested. We don't know their race. But I wonder, I mean, machete attacks and knife attacks. I'm just throwing it out there, but typically not something you hear of, right? In conjunction with the names of McDonald, Murphy, and McMillan. Okay?
The old stock Canadian names, yeah.
Yeah, pretty, safe bet to assume that a knife or machete incident does not involve the name Smith.
I saw this news report the other day. This is from 8 days ago in Oakland. This is the state of, we're having a very frank conversation about this that you're not allowed to talk about. But meanwhile, this is what the white liberals are doing. So this woman gets murdered. She gets dragged. So a bunch of people steal her car, and then she tries to chase after them, and she gets dragged under the car, and then ends up dying several days later. So her family and her friends are calling out that they don't want these guys put in jail.
Yeah, I heard this. Oh my God.
There's absolutely an opportunity for us to stand in her values and support.
I can't hear the audio.
Oh, sorry, I could fix that right now. Share screen, share audio. All right, can you hear?
Hours after her tragic death was announced, friends and family of Jen Angel released a plea that if the people responsible for her death were caught, they are not to be locked up, but to be offered restorative justice.
Now, certainly, it's a request we don't hear often from the loved ones of crime victims. ABC 7 News.
I mean, what can you do with people like this? Like, your friend gets murdered, and your first prerogative is to make it so that the killers don't get jailed. It's like, hello, retard. Like, they could hurt somebody else. You don't get to make that say. And only because of the color of their skin are you doing that, too.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard of this one, but in South Carolina, what was she, 14 years old? Was brutally beaten by a bunch of, black girls. And then not only did they beat the shit out of her and film it, they then went on an online campaign of bullying and basically shared it everywhere. And, were harassing her online, and she kills herself. And then, people are like, well, how many times do we need to see the black on white bullshit before we, start addressing the fact there's an issue with race relations in this country, and it's not white people being violent towards black people. It's actually the reverse. And so people are bringing this up, and the dad goes, no, don't bring race into it. Your daughter was beaten and then, driven to suicide by this group of girls, and you're saying, well, don't bring race into it. It was racially motivated.
Yeah, and how can we never hear about motive? We never hear about motives when it comes to crimes on like that on white people. We never hear the motive. It's always the other way around, right? It's like whenever
sleight of hand, like
a white teenager who's on SSRIs, does a mass shooting. There's always some sort of political motivation. But when it's the other way around, we never hear they hate white people. They're actually racist against white people.
Sorry, I misspoke there too. That incident wasn't in South Carolina. I'm getting confused because there's so many of these incidents that have happened just in the past couple of weeks. But the one with the girl was in New Jersey. The one in South Carolina was a group of 6th grade white students were dragged to a spot on a playground and forced to say Black Lives Matter by a bunch of black students. And some of them who were didn't want to take part in it were beaten for not wanting to take part in it. So this is the kind of rhetoric this is where this kind of rhetoric is leading to. You have black students dragging white students and then forcing them to basically, espouse platitudes about how much Black Lives Matter.
That sounds like a cult.
That's exactly what it is. And then on top of that, Edgy brings up this incident from California. There was another one from California where a white doctor who's going for a bike ride at night is run over by a black man. The black man gets out, begins stabbing him to death while uttering white slurs and talking about white privilege. This was all witnessed.
You can't get more on the nose than that. And the thing is, that they have a sleight of hand, so that whenever a white person does anything, they have to probe into their whole history. And if they see you have any like social media posts, then that could potentially contribute to what happened in the crime or the violence, even if they were just defending themselves, right? But then since they like the media and the government controls the ideological framework and like the framework of language surrounding race relations, whenever a black person does something against a white person or anybody else, there's nothing that they don't probe into it. They don't ask any questions. It's always just like, oh, it was just a crime, individual incident, you know. Even if there is evidence like that, they rarely go into it. And if they do apply hate crime charges, they don't publicize it, right?
It goes on and on too. Like I'm just thinking of, I can think of so many incidents in the past 2 weeks alone.
Do you know what the stats are though for black on white versus white on black in America?
It's
so
insane.
So it's like
insane.
it's 30-1 for black on white versus, so for every 30 black on white murders, there's about maybe one or maybe even a half. Like it's more like 45-1. It's absolutely insane. And yet, the narrative that is popular is the complete opposite. It's like, if you watched American or Western media, you'd think that like white people are just going around hunting them down. But it's just honestly the complete opposite in a way.
That's just murder too. Like that's bad enough, but like go look at like all of these incidents that are coming out they're school-age children, and I'm starting to suspect. Maybe I'm way off base here or something. I don't know. But do you think that maybe all the rhetoric that you've rammed down these children's throats for the past 7-8 years is starting to, manifest in some unsavory ways? How you were talking about Black Lives Matter and white people evil and all these things. There was literally an incident. God, there's so many of them. There was an incident recently where somebody posted this video. This black teacher, right, wearing a Black Lives Matter face mask, talks about how she's begun instituting communist-style lunches in her classroom because she felt that the white students had better prepared lunches than the black students or the students of color. So what she did was she gathered all of the students' lunches and then she decided who got what. And one of the white students complained because his Oreos were being given to a black student and he was being given carrots and hummus. And she said, well, not only do we need to make this fair, we need to, give justice for 300 years of oppression. So
straight to the
you,
gulag.
You little white cracker. You don't get your Oreos. They go to the black kid because of something, for some reason that somebody did 300 years ago. That's your fault, you little fucker. Imagine doing that to a child. These were like 6 and 7-year-olds, I think, that she's doing this to.
Oh, that's
that
sick.
reminds me of that viral clip in the daycare where the white, there's a little white kid, and then the black kid comes up and steals his toy, and then the white kid follows him around and is trying to get it back, and he's not really being that violent. He's just trying to grab the toy, and then the two black supervisors there, they just see the kid for like 1 second, and then they pull him and they like slam him down twice. And I think they got fired, but it goes to show they have like, it seems like evidence that they have internal instincts for their own in-group right there.
Well, I don't know if you've seen those statistics before, but that's actually true. And funny enough, like they've shown this. It's like if you ask different races what they think about other races. So white people are the only race, when asked this question, that view their own race negatively compared to other ones.
Right. We're the most altruistic and accepting of outgroup, and then you get taken advantage for it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. You should judge people by the content of their character, but at the same time, you shouldn't hate yourself for these kind of things, and you should be able to realize that other people have in-group and out-group preferences too, and then act accordingly. Yeah.
And it's crazy too, because I forget I wish we had this, but it's like if you look at it, it's like, when asked if Latino people believe that Latino people are good, it's like 90% say yes. when black people are asked if black people are good, it's something like 90% say yes. And then if you ask those same groups about white people, it drops substantially. But the funniest thing about it is that when white people are asked if white people are good, they have the lowest score for judging white people. White people view white people the most with the most disdain.
Well,
Have you ever
we're even taught in school to hate ourselves, like we're white colonizers, and that's what I learned in geography. Like,
yeah.
Have you ever heard of this YouTube channel, AK Nation News? So it's this black guy who looks like Afro Man, and he just every night he live streams and he goes through like all the different Fox News or local news for different cities, and it's just him and a bunch of black dudes yucking it up at how fucked up their community is, essentially. And they use code words like sunman. Oh, that's gonna be a sun man for sure. And they're just cracking, but it's just insane the stuff that they cover, because they're just like perusing through different local news, like, let's see what Oakland looks like. Oh shit, you know, and like the crimes are like crazy, and there's so many different situations that they cover, and they're just shaking their head at these like white liberals. Like they really don't like the white liberals too, because it's like, you stupid fuck, you're allowing this to happen, you're not like stopping it. You're like that lady with the baker and all her friends who wanna who wanna let murderers out. And there was another one where this guy moves into a diverse neighborhood, sets up a basketball net out on the back side of his like shit area, because it has one of those back alleys with your like garage. So kids are playing there, and the guy goes out, asks them if they could stop because his kid is sleeping and it's dark now, and they don't do it. So he comes back out again, and they just beat the living shit out of him. And it's like, that's what you get for thinking that it's all hunky-dory and like you're trying to be the white liberal savior, and you're dealing with people who do not give a fuck.
I was even surrounded at the grocery store in my car by, I'm pretty sure what was a migrant. I was going shopping. They were car checking. I think I did post this on my Telegram.
You sent it to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I went grocery shopping, and there were these two, like,
sure, I'll be right back,
you know, middle-aged, well, not middle-aged, but like probably, you know, late teenagers that I think were migrants, car checking in the parking lot. And they didn't know I was in my car and went to come car check my car, and I was in it, and he froze, and I was filming him because I knew exactly what they were doing, and he just froze there and stood there for like a good minute, and then I just watched them proceed on to the next car. But it's like, because I was filming him, he took on this role of like, why is there a white person filming me? Like, it's not the other way around. It's like, oh, she's being racist and filming me, presuming I'm doing something wrong, when I've just watched him potentially try and break into other people's cars. Like, no one's safe. Never relax when you're not even going to the grocery store. Don't ever relax, especially if you're a woman. Lock your doors.
For sure. And again, too, we just had this, I don't know if you read this Substack. What was his name? Carl Stack is his like handle. I think his name is Chris Brunet. So he's a smaller Substacker, but he's growing rapidly because he's covering things like this. And it's like, so now we have, and what was it? The government announced it officially the other day, and it's like race-based justice now. So if you're black, you're going to have lesser sentencing in Canada because you're black. Did you see this, Leigh?
No.
Yeah, so Nova Scotia had a ruling where it basically, like, because the accused was black and found guilty, but they're going to be given a lesser sentence because of their race. And so this is something that's going to be applied nationwide.
Of course it is.
If you're BIPOC, you're going to get lesser sentences because you're BIPOC.
It's because they know the migrants that are coming in are going to be committing crimes. 100%. They know.
They are, like, they already are. They already are.
It's true.
So it's going to get worse, and I think it's hilarious. Yeah. I'm sorry. I as much as I feel for the good people that live in Toronto, right? Because there's a lot of this community is from the GTA, so I feel for you. But in the same token, I think it's fucking hilarious how much Toronto is turning to a shithole because of its own goddamn policies. So yeah, I think it's hilarious that the 3 years ago, defund the police. We got to defund the police, man. The police bad. And now it's we don't have enough police budget to up the patrolling of TTC stations. We're out of overtime for the year of 2023 by March. We got to defund the police though, man. Police bad. Yeah, well now you're getting a knife in your face, you dumb bitch. Like, good job.
What are they doing with that? Are they, because I heard that they wanted to put like social workers or something like that, or like, instead of police. That was their solution. Instead of police, they want social workers everywhere because police are too aggressive to black people.
I hope they do that. And then unfortunately for that social worker, the first one, I can't wait for the first one to get fucking stabbed whenever they try to de-escalate a situation.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Like, I remember my sister has this super liberal friend, and I remember her talking about this in 2020 when all the George Floyd shit was going on, and she's talking about de-escalating, right? And we need more police trained in de-escalation. Yeah, sure, maybe, but the problem with that is what happens whenever or her suggestion was we need basically what Toronto's going to do: more social workers, more mitigation experts, whatever you want to call them. It's like, okay, that's fine. I won't say here. I'll make up a name here. Julie. That's fine, Julie. What happens whenever I'm high on fucking, like, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5", like close to like 280 pounds. Like, I'm not a small guy. So what happens whenever I'm on fucking meth and you try to de-escalate the situation and I grab you by the throat, slam you against the wall and start beating the shit out of you? And you don't have a gun and you don't have a taser because you're not a police officer. You're a mitigation expert. You're a social worker. You excel in de-escalation. Well, how are you going to de-escalate the situation whenever I'm literally murdering you?
Well, I even make that argument when it comes to police that are women, because I don't think women should be police, because just exactly for that point.
100%. I think it's also liberal delusions 100% in that they think that most of these people want to be saved. Like, they want to reform themselves. I think there is people who get caught in it, but people who are predators, like that's a very obvious choice that you're making to go and victimize somebody. Like, you want restorative justice for actual predators. Like, yes, I know some people get caught in the system and we should help them, but there's no restorative justice for murderers and, violent criminals.
There's so much nonsense to this. It's like they're going to find out. Like, this is a fuck around and find out moment. Let them do it.
So do you think that they are going to continue with this abolish the police bullshit? Because as diversity increases, then I think they're going to have to walk themselves back. But I don't know how they're going to do that. On another hand, police are becoming more gay. Like, maybe in the past we might have been like, oh, black the blue, because we see what's happening with these diverse neighborhoods. And you're like, like Michael Brown did swipe for his gun or whatever. What are you talking about? Back the blue, But now the police have turned on us, like patriots and people who are standing up against the system. And it's like the theory of anarcho-tyranny, where they'll get you for thought crimes and for thinking outside of the system or going after politicians, like with your speech. Yet they'll let all these fentanyl users and dealers and violent criminals and career criminals do whatever they want and in and out of jail like a revolving door, if they even go in.
It's intentional. It's almost like they're letting it happen, right? Because they know what's going to happen. I don't know. I've looked at the Kalergi plan, and I think it's kind of on par with that. They know that, Christian values don't align with Muslim values. So when you mix the two together, they know exactly what's going to happen. We're going to take each other out, is what they're hoping for. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leigh touched on some good points there too a while back. The whole everything with Steven Crowder, he did a great segment, a Change My Mind segment recently when it comes to the police, about how basically his argument was women shouldn't be cops. or I think he was talking about the military, but he did both, right? He had stats for both, and he had some great ones for both. But like the reality is, women are more likely to be injured than male police officers in the same kinds of altercations.
We
Women
might
are
break
more
a
likely to
nail.
become victims. Women are more likely to shoot or use lethal force against a suspect because they can't deal with the situation otherwise. If you want great examples of this, look at what happened whenever 2 female officers tried to take down a kid in hockey skates in Calgary. The kid basically shrugged them off. You know, absolutely, women should not be police officers if they can't meet the exact same requirements that men have to.
Well, I was watching Greg's live stream of the line, the Green Goblins is what I called them. You know, the Quebec police that were at the convoy, and there was a few women in there, and they were literally 3 apples high. And I'm like, what are you gonna do? There's men here that are twice your size that could probably just like toss you aside, no problem. You can barely hold yourself up wearing that equipment. Like,
you're out of your depth, manlet. Just call them a manlet. Or a womanlet.
It would have been for there was men like the line where I got arrested. I didn't see any women, but like the guy in front of me that ended up like pulling me through to be arrested, which was basically like he grabbed my shirt and I just went like this and let him pull me. Was like 5'6". I could have easily grabbed this stupid little gay club and started beating the shit out of him and 3 other ones, and probably taken out 5 of them before anything happened to me. It's not just women. There should be requirements for just size and height in general, and then like much stricter, stringent requirements for self-defense and capability, shooting, all things.
Well, do you know anything about what happened in the Tyre Nichols situation in Memphis, Tennessee? Basically, 5 like cops of that kind of at least physical caliber that you were mentioning, beating the living shit out of this poor guy for several minutes, caused him to die. But this was because of all this, the Ferguson effect type thing where people don't want to be police officers, especially in a diverse area like that. And then what happens, they had to lower the requirements. Basically, they lowered the physical requirements a ton and the experience requirements to the point where it's just like you could basically have done like a year or 2 of anything. And then, and you could also be a violent criminal, supposedly, and then become a cop. And then what did these guys do? They acted like violent criminals. And now what are they doing to audit the police even more? Now, what are you supposed to do in that situation? You're already fucked. You already fucked them. Now you're going to fuck them more?
At least two of those officers were not hired through the Memphis Police Department's hiring process. They were selected and basically trained through a city initiative. So, and this was like you just said, this was as a result of the BLM riots and the George Floyd and all this stuff, right? And the affirmative action to basically like, well, we're not going to let the police decide who the police employs anymore. We're going to have a say in this. So good job. The idiot city decided they were going to change the requirements for policing for their city, and they hired thugs, right, who then acted like thugs, and then the police department gets blamed for the city's inadequacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just wait until private security is actually taking the responsibility of police. They're underqualified because there's not going to be enough police, right? Because they're going to be defunding them, or there's not going to be a budget for the amount of crime that's going on. So I've thought this for a while, that they're going to use private security, who all of their employees are pretty much migrants, and they're going to be the ones doing the patrolling, and have some sort of bias and very unprofessional, and they're going to have sweeping powers. And they use private security for the G20. They dress them up like police officers. And that's why there were so many atrocities that happened at the G20. And that's why the police were actually charged and convicted by, like, I think their reward was like 700,000 is what the protesters were rewarded. But they didn't have badge numbers or anything like that. They used private security because they didn't have enough police officers to control the population at the G20.
Well, they didn't have badge when I got arrested. Like, that was driven home. The Green Goblins, as you I call them the Green Stormtroopers, but whatever. None of them had badge numbers or identification of any kind.
They had green patches right here. And then their helmet numbers are nothing.
Yeah. So it was nonsense, but yeah, it's going to get worse. It'll absolutely get worse. And to drive the point home too, the migrants replacing police in this country. Well, if you don't believe that, then look at what they're doing right now with the military. Now, all of a sudden, permanent residents can become members of our military. They have had 3,000 applications of permanent residents to our military. If you don't think they're going to replace, because the RCMP is in a similar recruiting crisis to the military in this country, as are all forces. Like, what do you think is going to happen whenever they can't fill their ranks? They'll fill them with anyone they can. And those people will not be loyal to Canada. They will not have any kind of attachment to Canadian people. They are doing it for money. And as soon as you're replacing your police force with people who aren't, patriotic, loyal citizens that want to enforce justice and the law in this country, then all of a sudden you've got basically a Stasi that will do whatever they're told for $1.
When was that litmus test done where they did on the Canadian Armed Forces that showed that they would not, that they wouldn't persecute their own people? Like, that was done already years ago. They were asked if they were polled, basically.
We had a very good one even more recently. It came up in the EMA inquiry. Something that was suspected but not proven until the EMA inquiry was that the military was asked to take part in it. And I don't know if it was, they refused. Now, I don't know who refused. I don't know if it was, I doubt it was, General Air. And I doubt it was, what's her name? Karen there, the cope, I doubt it was any of the chief staff that did this, but I guarantee you there was captains and majors and maybe as high as lieutenant colonels that were saying, like, this is a bad idea. The troops are not on board with this. And in fact, there's a good chance that if you send them there, they're going to cross lines and they're just going to join the protests.
Yeah. And get someone like Harjit Sajjan or Anita Anand, who are our defense ministers, that weren't even born here, controlling our army. And it's exactly what you're saying. It's countries that don't care about Canada. They're not Canadian, so they don't care about these people that live here. Yeah.
And Derek and I talked to Captain James Formosa, artillery captain who was out of Shiloh, Manitoba, who said straight up that he had, his subordinates coming up to him and like, when are we slapping a flag on the lab and driving to Ottawa? Not to enforce the law or not to break up the protest, to join it. They wanted to drive labs to Ottawa and be like, fuck you, government. So yeah, they found out pretty quick. And that is a huge difference. If we're going to, being the anniversary of one of the most egregious displays of policing in this country's history, let's take a moment to acknowledge that the Canadian Armed Forces are not so cucked and fucked that they were willing to, bash Canadian skulls in because the government ordered them to. Not only that, the government had to shut, like this was from James Formosa, after the convoy started, the government shut down operations under the guise of COVID. So until the convoy was over, they didn't return to work. Why? Because they were afraid. They were afraid of what the military would do. You know who they weren't afraid of? The police. They knew the police would do what they're fucking told, because they did. So fuck the police and God bless the military.
It's such a cop-out too. Like when I was watching Greg's, like the replay of when like Greg's interviews and stuff, people are like, well, they're just following orders. We can't blame the police. They're just following orders. It's like those cops could have turned around and walked away from that police line. They could have turned in their badge and said, I'm not working for this force anymore. I don't want to do this. They could refuse, and following orders, or they're just doing their job, is such a cop-out. It's disgusting. And you're giving them an excuse for, being tyrannical bootlickers. It's ridiculous. I don't accept that answer. I don't.
Do you think we should... Sorry, do you think we should be infiltrating the police at all? Or is it just a done deal, right? Because for institutions, for one, you want to separate, but you also want to get in there and be able to have some influence in there. I know it can be hard, but is the police, is that just a done deal?
I think it is.
Yeah, I think it is.
I think, and I don't mean the RCMP. I mean all of them, every single one of them.
Yeah.
You know why? Because I know this because I was in Ottawa. Vancouver police were there. Montreal police were there. Calgary police were there. Durham, Peel, York. Everywhere in this country, every police force sent officers to help. And you know what?
Mhm.
I don't care if you volunteered or not. Leigh nailed this. Like, there is no excuse. If you're still in uniform, you're a fucking traitor to this country. I don't care if you didn't go. I don't care if you don't agree with the COVID policies. I don't care if you think, some of the things that our government is doing are fucked. And that I don't even care if you agree with us 100%. In fact, I don't even give a fuck if you donated to the Freedom Convoy and got, a slap on the wrist for doing so. Okay, I don't care. You know why? Because you're still wearing a uniform. You're still going around propping up this government. And if you didn't volunteer to go to Ottawa because you didn't want to take part in that, you still took the shift of the fucking guy who did, didn't you? You still took the money. You still went and gave traffic tickets and enforced the law while your buddies were in Ottawa beating the shit out of protesters. And then whenever your buddies came back, you still, were willing to dress in the same locker room, wear the same uniform. You're still buddy with them, right? Thin blue line, right, boys? You're all the same. Whether you engaged in the egregious activity or not, you're the fucking same.
Yeah, another talking point was like, oh, they don't want to be here. Look at their eyes. They don't want to be here. They absolutely want to be there. They took they were offered double time and a half to freaking be there. Of course they want to be there. They took a paycheck to beat Canadians.
Well, you know what? They might not have wanted to be there, but they were willing to be there for the money. It may not have been what they wanted to do necessarily, but they were still willing to do it. So fuck, all of them are guilty. There's probably, I would say, like, there's maybe out of 100,000 police officers in this country, there might be 100 that are still good police officers that are still in the system because they're actively working against it from the inside. Okay, the officer that leaked information to Jeremy, the officer that leaked information to me, they're actively, I know who these people are. They're actively working against the police. Okay. So that's balls. Okay. That's a different level of commitment to the cause. That not only are you going to walk away from it, no. You're going to keep fighting it from within at risk of going to fucking jail. You get caught, you can go to fucking jail for what you're doing. That's a whole other, so yeah, but maybe there's maybe 100 max in this entire country that are doing that. Probably less. I would guess there's probably 10 or less that are doing that in this country.
Right. So I guess they're done. There's not, like, even if you got in there at this point, like, you would be sniffed out in a second. They're increasing vetting, so-called, which is just making sure that anybody who's even slightly based or has opinions even slightly critical of the establishment, that they're not going to make it through the ranks. Right? Are there any institutions that you think are worth trying to infiltrate to at least have some kind of influence within, like maybe academia or maybe the military? Like, obviously, we have Vets for Freedom, and like, they're doing a fantastic job at
remove yourself completely from anything that is involved with the government. That is my solution.
I mean, you can make the case that there's no, I don't think it's worth taking a government job in a bureaucracy or like whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, even if you work at the fucking DMV, fuck you. You're contributing to propping this system up. Like, I don't think, like, all of them.
That's how I feel too right now. Like,
yeah, but I will say that, like, if you're somebody who's trying to, like, elected leadership might be worth it. If it's a school board trustee or a counselor or a mayor, things like that, that's different, because then you're not taking orders, you're the one giving them, or at least you're the one that's helping shape policy. So, like, that might be worth it, that kind of infiltration, but that's not really infiltration. That's just straight up trying to get elected.
Wasn't the best word. Yeah. I get what you're saying. Yeah, there are avenues that you could get in and have some influence, but there's a lot of them that are just no good anymore.
Literally all of it. Anything that if you work with government in any way, like directly, like, you're contributing to propping up this system. I don't know. Maybe if you're a fucking ranger for wildlife and fisheries. I don't know. Maybe. Like,
well, then you'll be enforcing climate lockdowns in the future.
Yeah, actually, you're right. You're still part of the safe. Yeah, fuck everybody who works for the government. Period.
Do you have a license for that fishing pole? Like,
well, actually, from at least in Ontario, I saw Doug Ford post this yesterday. From February 18th to 20th, you don't need a license to fish.
He did that last year. He did that last year too.
Yeah. So there you go. That's But pretty soon it's going to be, oh, you got a license, them memes. That's where it's going. So yeah, no. The other thing too, you said like, is it worth trying to get good people in Edgy? Like, no, I think it's actually these. You need to get all the good people out, and you need to let them fill their ranks with just absolute degenerates and people that are scum, and then so everybody will see what they are.
Yeah, that's
how you get people to see what. Just let them fill.
Accelerationist. Oh my god. It's like if they're doing it to themselves, and you're like, yeah,
that's
keep
why
it up.
I say like vote for Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party. Like I am totally on board with that. Just let it burn.
Right.
It's accelerating it because if the Conservatives get in, it's just gonna overcorrect itself, and then it'll just slow the process. So let's just get it over with.
I think I'm fine with it either way, really. But I think there's something to be said of. Jeremy was kind of talking about this the other day. Was it in a short video? I've said it before too. It's like, but no real change is going to happen in this country at the political level, especially at the federal political level, until the CPC wins again. People need to see the CPC win. They need to see them become what we all know they are. Nothing is going to change until they win. Unfortunately.
Well, that'll wake everybody up to the myth of, or the illusion of opposition.
Peter Polyev is our prime minister. Like that's just wild to me.
I know, but let me ask you this, Leigh. If the Liberals win the next election, right? Let's say they win another minority or majority. Let's just hypothetically.
Mm-hmm.
What are people going to be saying going into the next election? The same fucking things they are. We got to get the libs out. I
know. It's true.
So until the CPC wins, it doesn't matter. Like it'll be the same thing over and over until the CPC wins. And I don't even know if it'll change then. It probably won't. But that's the only way it's potentially going to, is if we get the CPC in there and they show their hand, what they really are.
I was watching Pleb's coverage of the, what do you call this? The anniversary of the convoy? Just that march that they're having in Ottawa yesterday.
Yeah.
And like, good on him for being there. You know, some of the credit you get is just showing up. But on the other hand, what he said made me laugh because I was just thinking, well, what are they marching there for? They're yelling freedom and stuff. Like most people, like feel like all this COVID stuff has passed. We obviously know there's more stuff coming down the pipeline, but it seems kind of incoherent to people who aren't in the know for what's going on. But what he said made me laugh was, seems like they're going to be marching here until Trudeau's gone.
Ugh.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's that's what's going to solve everything, you know?
Yeah,
like that's like the mentality he has and many other people, like most normie conservatives have.
That's the question I keep asking now. It's like, okay, you want to get Trudeau out, and then what? You're going to elect somebody else that's just as stupid. Okay, let's do it. Fine.
As if the power of the universe, like, is just sitting in Justin Trudeau's hand. Like, what do you think is going on here?
Well, I think the difference is there might be some hope here because, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of people they think that if we get Pierre elected, then they can just, everything's going to go back to, being better, go back to some kind of normal, right? I think the difference is there's too many of us now that, and I include some CPC supporters in this. They're paying attention. They're not passively engaged. They're not temporarily engaged. They're locked in now. They're watching what's going on. They're paying attention. So, like, I even saw this. There's I've talked to him a few times on Twitter Spaces. His handle is PootyBot on Twitter, and he's a CPC supporter, but passively, or kind of regretfully, or he basically thinks that the PPC can't win and the CPC is the only chance of getting rid of Trudeau, but he's not one of these deluded ones, right, who thinks Pierre is great. And so when Pierre gives his answer to that CBC reporter on Friday, right, he's like, what the fuck was that, Pierre? There's a lot of them that are at least aware now that they're not just going to give him a free pass on everything. There's a lot of idiot dum-dums that are still, anything Pierre does is fucking, his shit is purple and smells like rainbow sherbet. Right? That's the kind of attitude they have for Pierre. But there's a lot of them that know who he is and are paying attention. So I think if the Conservatives did get in and they, you know, a lot of people, yeah, will go back to sleep, but like we're not going to. A lot of these Conservative supporters aren't going to just give him a free pass. Like they want to see action, not platitudes, not the bare minimum. And they're already getting frustrated with it. So if he comes in and he's a dud, like let's say he wins and he's just a complete fraud, which he probably is, they're going to notice that and they're not going to take it this time. I don't think.
But you said it was impossible for them to win. So
it's not impossible for them to, it's impossible for them to win a majority. Like we actually saw, I don't know if people saw this one. This one didn't get shared around as much because it wasn't favorable to the Conservatives. So it went pretty quiet. So, but Nanos released a poll for the middle of January to the middle of February for Ontario. And, you know, Pierre has been polling quite well in Ontario and was allegedly taking the lead. And then a month later, he was polling at 13% behind the Liberals in Ontario. So there's, I don't think they can win. And and even worse, they're polling fourth in Quebec. The Conservatives are polling behind the NDP, the Liberals. The Bloc Québécois was polling at the best in Quebec, followed by the Liberals, followed by the NDP, followed by the Conservatives.
Yikes.
So the two areas that Pierre absolutely needs to win in order to win even a minority are not going his direction. He needs Ontario and Quebec seats, and he's not getting them. So I don't know what his plan is here.
An election actually would be fun right now. I think it would be fun if they call one in the spring. I think it'll be great for the memes.
I don't think they will. I really don't.
Yeah. Well, when was the last election? It's been almost 2 years, right?
It'll be 2 years in August or September.
Yeah. Well, I guess I don't know, does that coalition count with the NDP? Because usually a minority government doesn't last more than 2 years.
I don't know. It's not a coalition. It's a supply and confidence agreement. It's a fucking coalition, obviously. But we've been over this before. I don't see why they would. There's nothing indicates that the Liberals are going to do better. So why would they want to call one? The NDP are fucking broke, and they're polling it looks like they will do worse. They're supposed to lose seats if based on projections. So why would they give up? On top of that, there's what if nothing is going to break that agreement? Then why would they call an election? The only good answer to that I've seen put forward, and I still don't think it's a good answer, but it's a decent one anyways, is that the Liberals know that they're going to lose the next election, whether by, and that's probably true, whether by majority or most likely minority, right, to the Conservatives. So if you know you're going to lose, is it better to lose sooner rather than later? Because the longer this goes on, the more likely that the Conservatives are to win more seats, and the more likely they are to win a majority. Because this is just the way the ebb and flow of politics works, right?
Well, the longer the Liberals are in charge,
the more desire there is to get rid of that party. So if this goes to 2025, we might get to the point where it starts looking like the Conservatives could win a majority. If they call an election right now, they probably won't. So there's this idea that the Liberals might want to call one and just kind of concede basically and regroup, so that the Conservatives are held to a minority. They can swap out their leadership. They can work on their brand. They can hammer on the Conservatives for a couple of years, and then whenever there's another election, then you basically try to take power again, right? So basically,
so what if there was even a resignation of because I've seen a few people saying there's a resignation coming of Chrystia Freeland, which never happened in the time span that it was supposed to happen.
I know.
But what if there was, okay, hypothetically, if Chrystia Freeland decided, okay, I'm going to go work for the WEF or whatever it is, and I'm out of here, they would have to hold an election. I feel because that's a big position to fill. She's in charge of finance and for the deputy prime minister. I feel no,
I don't think they would. I think they'd probably just do a cabinet shuffle because they're kind of due for one of those right now. You've got a whole bunch of ministers that are in scandals. So like, yeah, I'm sure a cabinet shuffle is coming any day now. That's something I do expect. And I wouldn't be surprised if Christian Freeland drops the Minister of Finance role whenever they do their next cabinet shuffle, because there's going to be one probably in the spring. Whether or not there's an election, I'm sure we're going to see that. But
and then the collusion with the Chinese election interference, that also came out on Friday. That kind of was swept under the rug momentarily. I think over like the EMA hearing inquiry results. It was kind of both came out at the same time, so it was like
conveniently.
Yeah, so that's
a lot of that going on.
A huge scandal overshadowed by a massive victory, didn't they?
Yeah.
Do you know what the contents of this was? Like, obviously, they're trying to influence, but the how and
no.
No, I always just thought this was a given, but it would be interesting to see how exactly they go about it, right?
I just assume that's happening already.
They've already talked about, CSIS has talked about this for years, about how they're trying to influence Canadian politics. So if people aren't familiar with this, the CCP has a policy that anyone emigrating from China takes basically an oath of loyalty to the CCP. So before they're even allowed to leave the country, they're required to basically swear their undying loyalty. It's basically like a China first policy.
Right. Chai pack.
These kinds of, the Chinese immigrants of today are not the Chinese immigrants of the 70s and 80s. Okay. There's a big difference. The ones that came here in the 60s, 70s, and 80s were defectors. Like, so growing up, I had a friend, his father and his mother came here on a fucking fishing boat, like hidden, right? They escaped. Like they hated the Chinese Communist Party. Like, they're extremely loyal to Canada. Okay. It's different now. They've basically set up this thing where it's like, okay, we're going to allow our people to leave, but we're going to basically keep tabs on them. That's why they have these police stations, right? Yeah. It's to monitor Chinese national activity in other countries. The states have these police stations too. So basically they're holding their family members hostage back home, basically ensuring that they're going to do what they're fucking told over here, these kinds of things. And then on top of that, they've set up these organizations, and I forget what the names of them are. They're weird, kind of neutral sounding names, like the Chinese Friendship Organization and things like that. And basically what they are is they're kind of like Freemason style lodges that are designed to effect favorable CCP policy in Canada, whether through governance or through business and corporations, right? So basically they're infiltrating legally in a lot of cases. They're doing things that are completely legal under Canadian law, but in spirit are very treasonous or seditionist, essentially like espionage, right? So it's a huge, there's that kind of influence that's going on. I don't know specifically about this one, but obviously they're trying to influence Canadian elections. They're doing it legally and illegally. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost kind of boring what they're doing, that it's not sensational enough that it makes you want to look into it, but nevertheless they're gaining all that influence, right?
It's things as simple sorry, Leigh, there's a great example of this is what Chinese nationals are doing to the Canadian housing market. And there's a reason why they've tried to institute these restrictions or fines or measures to curb foreign home ownership, but you have fucking Chinese nationals buying up entire condo buildings in Vancouver and then not housing anyone in them.
Not to mention we were training their military.
Yeah, so think about how subversive and how detrimental that these totally legal policies, or at least what were totally legal kind of measures, it ties into China's war doctrine, which is total war, unrestricted warfare. So it's how do you really hurt your enemies? It's not by dropping bombs on them. It's by crippling their housing market and their economies.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, or another great example is where's all this fentanyl coming from? China.
Mm-hmm.
And that should be treated like it's an act of war, because fentanyl is not a drug. It's a fucking chemical weapon that's being used against our population. And not only that, now it's legal. The legal dose that you can carry around in BC is 2.5 grams of fentanyl. That's 1,000 lethal doses of fentanyl that you can just walk around with. This is insane.
Crazy. Man, I remember the good old days where you'd go out on the streets, you'd buy a gram of heroin, and you just slam it, and, you know, you probably wouldn't die. But now we can't even have that. It's not a good time to be a junkie.
Were those the good old days for you?
Yeah. You know, back when I was like 12, 13 years old, back in the good old days.
Slamming heroin. Okay.
Yeah. Me and the boys. But
and
that's
nostalgia for Train Spotting, basically.
yeah. I did watch that movie over and over again. So
it's a great movie.
Yeah. Those days are over though. Like, you're not gonna have a cool adventure worth a movie. It's just gonna be fucking you fading out and having multiple cardiac arrests and injections of Narcan before you finally kick the bucket.
Yeah.
Or just get a booster. Other one.
Six people a day. 6 people a fucking day. And I can't even remember if that's just BC or if that's all of Canada. 6 people a day dying from fucking fentanyl. I think that's BC only.
Almost seems intentional, doesn't it?
It is intentional. It is a fucking chemical weapon.
I was being sarcastic.
All the best forms of warfare, civilizational warfare, are done through covert or roundabout means.
It doesn't seem so covert to me, to be honest. But I'm autistic, so
you might be xenophobic, right? Is that the word? I'm surprised that's not more of a thing, right? Stop Asian hate. All these Asians getting beat up randomly in the street. It's all because of Trump said Chinese virus, right? Because he said China. Yet we could call the Chinese balloon, like, immediately, and just coom over that fucking bullshit. Right? What do you think about obviously we have all these Chinese nationals that are spying on us and we're just bending over for them, especially like Vancouver and BC. But it seems like at least the American war machine is being aggressive against China, especially like the neocons. How do we factor into that, you think? Because it seems it seems like the neocons, like Tucker and them, are trying to say that, oh, Biden is on the side of China. He's compromised by China because of Hunter's laptop or whatever. Meanwhile, they're both really just saying the same thing. They're like kind of aggressing against China.
Let's be honest. China's the distraction from Israel.
I mean, I would agree with that, but I also don't know that much about China. Like, this goes.
Just
goes
kidding,
through...
Bernie. I'm just kidding, Bernie.
Yeah. Be more racist against the China, and then we'll let you live.
Well, it's funny you say that because I think it's hilarious to use an American example here. So you have this thing, AIPAC, right? American Israeli Political Associate, whatever it is.
Action Committee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
the gay committee, am I right?
Whoa.
You have AIPAC, and they're literally bragging about how
Sorry, I have sound effects that you didn't know about.
I heard it.
Well, so you have AIPAC, right? And AIPAC is bragging about how 96% of the candidates that they backed in the midterm elections won their seats. Imagine if that was the Chai Pac, right? Like the Chinese Political Action Committee.
Hey man,
and China was bragging about how 96% of the candidates that they backed in an American election won. Could you imagine how that would be reacted to? So, like, why is it, like, I think that's hilarious. Israel good, China bad. Israel can totally influence our elections and brag about it. But if China was to do that, that would be so bad. Right? Ridiculous.
I would love to see the Chinese try to make the same argument. That like AIPAC and all of them. Like, oh, that's that's a xenophobic trope. No.
Yeah. That's exactly it. So it ties it, like,
It's like, did I say dual loyalty? No, I meant you only had one loyalty, and that's to Israel. Don't get me caught up with your tropes.
Yeah, there's another like you kind of reminded me of this earlier too. It's like the anti-Asian hate. We were talking about the black on white crime earlier. It's like, well, there's another group that's being fucking destroyed by black crime, and then it's being. Do you remember this one? Fucking, there's that shooting in California during the Lunar New Year, right? And so Stephen Gilboa gets out there and talks about anti-Asian hate, and then deletes the tweet whenever he realizes that it's a fucking Asian shooter.
Right.
And then there's other examples of this too, right? Of black on Asian violence being blamed on white people, like it's somehow their fault. And like the overwhelming majority of, I don't even know if I'd call them hate crimes, but just violent crimes against Asian people in America are committed by black people.
Oh, 100%. Like, I think it's like,
right?
It's even more egregious than the statistic I told you before, the blacks on whites. It's like, it's like almost 95, 98% that specific combination. And to add another one, there was this is when the Stop Asian Hate became big, like in the last year or two, is when that crazy guy, I think it was in Colorado, he was going to all the rub and tugs all the time, and he was like very deranged, and he knew what he was doing was wrong, but he blamed it on them for tempting him. So he went and did a string of shootings to all these different rub and tugs, and 4 out of 6 of the victims happened to be Asian, because Asians and rub and tugs, it's like white on rice. But they used that, even though there was no evidence that his motive had anything to do with them being Asian. And I think it was like a pressure release valve from all these constant violent attacks that were black on Asian, but they couldn't just outright say it, because then they might have to say what is actually going on. So they used that to obfuscate the greater situation. And then the extra sleight of hand that they pulled, because the Asians started getting really pissed off about this, obviously, but the Stop Asian Hate movement was completely usurped by, the Soros type backed NGOs to make sure to shift the blame on white people. And the mental gymnastics that they put forth were that white people want you to think that you're a model minority. The white supremacists want you to think you're a model minority because you're doing so well, and that they're only blaming it on black people because they want to see other groups pitted against each other. Now, how ironic is that coming from the people saying it?
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for my privilege. I don't have any.
White privilege in Canada now is getting your fucking throat slit on Calgary Transit, and then being told that your assaulter doesn't need to actually, that person died, so not even being told, you just die, and then having the person who committed the crime against you go to rehab because of colonialism. That's fucking white.
Like, I've never gotten a scholarship based on my skin color. I'm just saying. Like, that's
no, you'll get
to
denied it based on your skin color.
Yes.
It's the hilarious irony.
It's
here.
Yep.
I'll be right back. But it's almost. I know Derek is streaming at 8:30.
Yeah.
I need to go to the washroom quickly. But do you guys want to do some Terry Fox hate, or are you guys not down for that?
I want to have some Derek.
I have some theories. I did some research, and it seems
Derek's
like
update on Telegram nearly took me out when he said that Gord Downey died because Terry Fox didn't finish his job.
Okay, you know what? We'll do a little bit of it, and then we'll end the stream. Maybe like 5 minutes here of Terry Fox. Skepticism, let's just say.
Yeah. I leave it to Derek, man. It's freaking hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, no. Ferry's gonna slink down, like, so only like the top of his forehead is showing, and just so when the screen grab comes, he's not as involved. Okay, yeah, I'll leave it to Derek. I'll give Derek all the resources I had.
Yeah. Terry Fox psyops at 8:30 on the Rants cast. So
yeah.
tune in.
Oh
man,
God.
I was
I don't
dying
know if
so
you were
hard
going to.
on the Sunday stream when I saw that guy in the chat for a while, and I was like, "Are they gonna notice this guy? This guy's like freaking out, demanding. Like, I guess he donated a rage before, so he was like demanding answers from all you guys on why you thought the Terry Fox thing was like either acceptable or funny."
Are they actually going to propose like hate speech laws now? You can't question the Terry Fox run. It's going to be like mass graves.
That's
also
funny.
Terry Fox run.
Because there was a journalist from he was like a POW, a British. He was born in Britain and served in the British Army, and he was a POW in the Nazi camps and escaped like multiple times, and then he came to Canada and became like an award-winning investigative journalist. But now, like later on in his career in like the 80s and 90s, he got a bunch of like hate speech charges. He got labeled a Holocaust denier. But one of his famous stories is that in 1980, he said Terry Fox did not run all of Quebec. And that's the conspiracy theory I'm going with. So I'll make sure to send that over to Derek, see what he could do with that. But anyways, yeah, I think that was a fun stream. I love how it said fun casual stream, and then we just ended up like not a single one of them are okay.
If I learned something, it's a good stream, and I did learn something. So thanks for inviting me on, Ferry. It's always good talking with you too.
Yeah,
you're very insightful, man. You have a lot of knowledge and always something to offer. So it's always good. I enjoy listening to you speak. It's great. Honestly, keep up the good work. And I want you to start streaming on YouTube. I want you to get to 1,000 subs. So everyone in the chat, if you have not subscribed to the Ferryman on YouTube, go do that so he can stream from his phone.
Yeah, I don't even know. I couldn't post anything. I don't even know if it's up yet. I got a week, throttle or ban or whatever you want to call it I posted one of my rants, like the one about misinformation. So I already got one strike. So that's good.
Nice. Well, that's
how that works. But anyway, yeah, no,
you got to get Ferryman's toll 1, 2, 3, 4 and just alternate between the channels, right? Whoa, what is that? That's a BBM, big black
there you
mic.
Go.
Jeremy was the one who sent that to me. It's a mic, and I have a camera here somewhere.
It's got like an acoustic shield on it.
Yeah,
nice.
It's interesting. There we go. That's for the screenshot. There you go, buddy. Confident.
Yeah, no. So I don't know. I got to get set up better here, but probably moving soon. So, or we are moving soon. I just don't know when. So,
well, keep up the good work, and yeah, see what people are saying in the chat. Thanks everybody for coming out. Got decent viewership for just a random stream.
Nice. Yeah. What time is it?
8 o'clock. EST.
All right. Yeah. So I'm gonna jump out here and get ready for Rantscast or Plat Army or whatever we're calling it now.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for coming out, and I'll see you again. I'll be streaming again next Tuesday. Maybe I'll hop on tonight. Yeah. Thanks for coming out.
Tuesdays.
Cheers, everybody.
Tune in, or you're not an Edgy fan.
Exactly.
Bye.
Come watch me edge on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. EST.
No,
it's not. It's not a sexual thing. It's like my thing. I do the edgy